Welcome to Granma T's family reunion. Tomorrow's the big day, our annual get-together, where we get to visit with our extended family and catch up on what's going on. All of Granma T's children have said they are planning to attend the festivities, including Uncle Bobby, Uncle Joe, Uncle Timmy, Uncle Mike, and Aunt Maria. Beth is coming too, as are all of Grandma T's daughters-in-law and the countless number of grandkids and great-grandkids. The excitement is building as several of the family members have begun arriving at the lake house throughout the day today to help get things ready. Uncle Bobby and Uncle Joe have been setting up the tents and the chairs, picking up the kegs of beer, and setting up the horseshoe stakes and the badminton net for everyone to enjoy. Grandpa T even inspected the grill to ensure the gas is flowing and that we do not run out of propane. Inside, Beth has made several of her delicious pies, while Aunt Millie was in charge of making the potato salad and the baked beans. Early in the evening, when the setup was finished and the food was prepared for the next day, Grandpa T took the entire family on a pontoon ride around the lake. Everyone, that is, except Grandma T. She stayed behind to finish canning her tomatoes. After all, everyone will be arriving early tomorrow morning for the reunion, and she will not have time to finish the job if she doesn't do it now. About an hour later, the family returned from the boat ride, laughing about all the stories they'd shared and the fond memories from the childhood. That was until they walked into the house. When they walked through the door, they noticed Grandma T lying motionless on the floor. Was she okay? Was she hurt? They walked closer and realized that Grandma T is dead! Dead! That sweet little lady is gone! But how? Why? What happened and who's responsible? Was it foul play? It certainly looks that way. It's your job to determine who's guilty of killing the family matriarch. Law enforcement will take over the investigation from here.
Hello, I am Sergeant Bell. I am the lead officer in this investigation. Earlier this evening, we received a call from a neighbor requesting assistance at this location. When we arrived, we found the victim lying on the floor in the kitchen. The deceased is the homeowner, Rose Thomas, a 96-year-old female, approximately 5 feet tall, 104 pounds, with short gray hair. You all know her as Grandma T. Upon initial examination, it appears as if Grandma T was the victim of a horrific crime. You are all considered to be a suspect in her homicide. As you will learn, each of you had a motive to eliminate Grandma T. Grandma T was alive and well when you all left for your boat ride. Somewhere between the time you all left and the time the body was discovered at 7:45 p.m., Grandma T was murdered. One of you went through a lot of trouble to make this look like an accident. Let's start at the beginning to see if we can solve this crime. Here's what we know so far. Grandma and Grandpa T left their home and started driving to the lake house yesterday afternoon at 8:15 a.m. Along the way, they stopped at Smith's Farmers Market for corn on the cob and Culver's for lunch. They arrived at the lake house at approximately 1 p.m. They spent the next few hours unpacking the car and getting the house in order for guests. At 4:30 p.m., they went to dinner, and after dinner, they went grocery shopping. They arrived back at the lake house at 7:15 p.m. and unloaded the groceries. Grandma and Grandpa T sat on the deck with a glass of lemonade, and at 9 p.m. they went to sleep. The following day, Grandma T woke up at 7 a.m., grabbed breakfast, and sat on the deck to read the newspaper. Grandpa T joined her at 8:15 a.m. Bobby, Beth, Joe, and Millie arrived at the lake house later that morning. Beth made her pies for the picnic, and the men checked on the boat. Later, Millie started making the potato salad and the baked beans, while the men set up outside for the picnic tomorrow. At 2:45 p.m., Bobby and Joe drove into town to pick up a few items. The other family members arrived at the lake house in the afternoon. After dinner, Grandpa T took everyone for a boat ride. Grandma T stayed behind to can her tomatoes. Everyone arrived back from the boat ride at 8:10 p.m. And here we are. How well do you think you know each other? After all, you haven't seen some of these relatives in more than 3 years. One of you thought you had a solid alibi, being with the rest of the family on the pontoon. What has happened that would make one of you so upset that you plotted to get Grandma T out of the picture? Let's hear about the suspects to uncover the reason that may have led to the demise of Grandma T. Rose Thomas, affectionately called Grandma T, was the matriarch of the Spencer family. Her love for her family and those close to her was one of the many things that made Grandma T special. Grandma T was married twice. The first time was to Bobby Spencer Sr. During that time, she had 5 children, 4 sons, Bobby, Mike, Timmy, and Joe, and 1 daughter, Maria. After several years, Bobby Sr. disappeared, not wanting anything to do with Grandma T or the children. A few years later, Grandma T met Alan Thomas, who she would marry in November of 1963. Alan welcomed the children with open arms, raising them as his own and providing for the family. Other family members began to know him as Grandpa T. Grandma and Grandpa T have been married for over 25 years. Grandma T loved to sew. In fact, she made matching outfits for various family members over the years. She also loved canning. She would can cucumbers and tomatoes from Uncle Mike and Aunt Betty's farm. Anything that could be canned, Grandma T would can it. Grandma T also ran the laundromat that was situated directly behind the family home. The laundromat was owned by Joe Spencer, the family entrepreneur. When she was not in the laundromat or canning vegetables and fruits, Grandma T could be found relaxing on the porch swing under the carport. But that has all now changed. Grandma T has been killed right here in the kitchen where she was preparing for the annual family reunion. Who would want to kill such a sweetheart of a lady? For reasons yet unknown, everyone in this room, whether you know it or not, at one time or another wanted Grandma T out of the picture. But someone in this room actually went through with it. Someone killed Grandma T. Was it one of her daughters-in-law? Was it one of her sons? Her daughter? Her husband? Or even the dog? Pay close attention to the information you are about to be given about each of the suspects. Alan Thomas, also known as Grandpa T, enlisted in the military in 1938 and served until 1946. When he returned to civilian life, he worked in the mill company as a grain elevator operator and a maintenance man. He was also very handy around the house, able to fix or repair anything. Grandpa T even closed in the porch to the house and made a Grandma T sewing room. One day when he was remodeling an old house as a side job, he found a coffee can inside one of the walls behind the paneling. He opened the can to find a large amount of cash that had been left behind by the now deceased prior homeowner. However, he only told 1 or 2 people about his good fortune. Even though Bobby, Mike, Timmy, Joe, and Maria were not his biological children, he assumed the role of father and provider without hesitation, although at times he was sorry he did. I'll tell you, some of the shenanigans those boys got themselves into, how did they ever come up with those cockamamie ideas? Grandpa T's real love was his 4-door Dodge Dart Swinger. He took care of that car better than he did anybody in the family. He was upset when Grandma T told him to hang a swing in the carport. That meant his treasured automobile would no longer be parked under the carport. It would now be exposed to the harsh elements during the winter and the scorching Wisconsin sun in the summer. In his spare time, Grandpa T loved to make lamps out of old bottles. His work could be seen throughout the home, much to the dismay of Grandma T. After all, just how many bottle lamps can one house hold? Was Grandpa T still upset about having to leave his prized possession exposed to the ever-changing Wisconsin seasons? Did he get tired of hearing about all the bottle lamps spewed throughout the house? Or was there some underlying reason why he would want Grandma T out of his life? Bobby Spencer is the eldest son of Grandma T. Being the oldest son came with a lot of responsibilities, especially when his biological father just left and disappeared. Grandma T was left to care for 5 children alone. Bobby knew it was his responsibility to step up and become the man of the family. So when he was 18 years old, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy and fought during World War II. He would send home his pay to Grandma to help support his younger siblings. After a few years in the Navy, he also enlisted in the Army. Bobby met Beth Anderson on a blind date in Chicago and were married in 1953. After several years of unsuccessful attempts to conceive a child, Bobby and Beth decided adoption was the best plan for them to have a family. They adopted a little girl and a little boy soon after they were both born. They would become known as Lucy and Donnie Spencer. At long last, their family was complete. Bobby worked at the Veterans Home in Wisconsin for many years as an orderly. He turned to housekeeping after he sustained an injury on the job lifting a patient. Bobby owned a 56 Nomad and spent countless hours polishing that beauty every week. He also loved gardening. He would grow cucumbers, tomatoes, radishes, and strawberries in his backyard garden. He would spend his day in the garden from sunup to sundown, sometimes trying to hide out from Beth. Or maybe he was trying to grow delicious vegetables in his garden. Maybe, just maybe, Grandma T would use his cucumbers or tomatoes when she was canning, instead of always getting the produce from his brother. So many times Bobby had offered her the best produce from the garden, but she always said no. How many times can one person hear the word no before they snap? Was this the case? Did Bobby finally get tired of hearing about Mike and his vegetables? He would help to support the family when he was just 18 years old. Was it too much to ask for a little support from Grandma T in return? Well, was it? Beth was in her early 20s when she graduated from nursing school and was working as a nurse at the Veterans Home in Deer Lake, Wisconsin for many years. Beth married Grandpa T's oldest son, Bobby, in 1953. Beth loved to bake pies, and not just one pie, many pies for various events. She made multiple pies for the fundraiser at the Vets Home. She made pies for the church bazaars. She made pies for family gatherings. She made pies just because it was Sunday. Here a pie, there a pie, everywhere a pie. She also loved to knit and crochet. Every relative, family member, and even neighbors down the street had one of Beth's crocheted Afghans, which came in handy during those long cold winters in Wisconsin. She made sweaters and hats for the newborn nieces and nephews. She knitted booties for the residents of the Vets Home. She entered her blankets into the county fair on several occasions, winning first place twice. Just before the boat left the dock, Beth ran back into the house to grab her knitting supplies for the boat trip. The Harvest Festival was quickly approaching, and Beth still had quite a bit of work to do on the Afghan she plans to enter into this year's contest. One of her other favorite pastimes was going to the casino to play the slots. In fact, this weekend was supposed to be her long weekends away with her friends. But at the last minute, Grandma T changed the date of the reunion from June to July, on the same date as her casino trip. Of all weekends to have the reunion, she doesn't get much time to herself anymore, so she really enjoys being able to spend some girl time with her friends. Beth had considered not coming to the reunion. After all, it was inconsiderate that Grandma T changed the date without asking the family if they were free in July. Grandma T only ever thought of herself. She thinks just because she's old, no one would speak up against her. Has Beth finally had enough? If she left the lake house tonight, she could still make it in time for the casino trip. Joe Spencer was the family entrepreneur. In fact, he owned the laundromat that was behind Grandma T's family home. Grandma T simply ran the business and did all the work for Joe, while he collected the money and reaped the rewards. This allowed Joe to pursue his dream to own a bar. Joe was the only one in the family who did not serve in the military. Instead, he owned a bar in Chicago called the Pussycat Lounge. This was after Al Capone, Babyface Nelson, and John Dillinger had controlled the town. Now that the gangsters had left, Chicago was turning into a hopping place, a place where important people gathered to make history. The Pussycat Lounge was the same bar where Joe collaborated with Paul Anka to write the song Diana. No, really, you can see his name on the label and all. How about that? A famous person in the family. Joe was even in a movie at one point. A small part, but hey, have you ever been in a movie? Being a businessman in the heart of Chicago, Joe dressed the part, much to the envy of everyone else in Chicago. Joe's song Diana is still generating revenue to this day. Granma T, on the other hand, thought that she should be getting some of the cut of the profit. After all, if she wouldn't have been running his laundromat so he could work at the bar in Chicago, he never would have met those people. She brought this up in a conversation with Joe a few months ago. How dare she, that crazy woman? He worked hard to get where he is at today, with no help from Granma T. Joe has been dreading this family reunion for quite a while now, knowing he will hear about it yet again today. Or will he? Millie is the wife of Granma T's youngest son, Joe. They lived in a narrow shotgun house in the middle of Chicago. She shared this house with Joe and 2 children that she had from a previous marriage. Millie worked with Joe at the bar in Chicago, which worked out well for Joe. That allowed him to spend time doing what he loved most, performing. Millie would mingle with the patrons of the bar, listening to their life stories and their troubles, always with a smile on her face. She would spend many nights just wondering what Joe was doing in that back room with the group of men who frequented the bar. Come to find out, they were writing that song Diana. Millie was a kind woman who was nice to everyone she met. She would offer shelter in the extra rooms above the bar to those who were going through a rough patch in life, just to help them get back on their feet. She made sure they were well taken care of. Millie had blonde hair that was so big, just like every other woman at that time. Last month, Joe told Millie about the discussion he had with Granma T and her telling him that she deserved a cut of the royalties coming in from Diana. Millie was furious, not only about Granma T wanting royalties, but that she never considered Millie's kids to be part of the family. Granma T never made Millie's kids any shirts, never crocheted them hats, or even sent them cards on their birthday. And now she's demanding part of the money that Joe's worked so hard for. It's just one thing after another. Did Granma T resent Millie for never giving Joe children of his own? Heck, she never even wanted to spend time with the grandkids that she did have, let alone bring more grandkids into the family. Did Millie finally have enough? Timmy Spencer is the middle child and is married to Terry. They lived in Arizona and Nebraska before coming back home. Like his brothers, Timmy also entered the military at 18 years of age. When he left the military, he began working for a moving company. It was there that he became interested in flea markets. Timmy would purchase storage units from people who simply left the items behind or were behind on their payments. He would look through the items, saving those that appeared to have monetary value. Timmy would also visit flea markets on the weekends, again purchasing items that he felt could be worth something. He would take the items he purchased from storage units and flea markets and clean them up and sell them at his huge yard sales he would have every month. Once when he was cleaning out one of the storage units he bought, he found several pieces of art. Most of them were just paintings from no-name artists and weren't worth the canvas they were painted on. But one time, he found a painting that appeared to be different. He saw the signature at the bottom of the piece but couldn't tell what it said. He took it to an art appraiser to see what he would say about the art and give him an approximate dollar figure for what the piece might be worth. Imagine his surprise when the art appraiser told Timmy that the painting was done by none other than Claude Monet. The piece itself is worth over $50,000. Timmy put the artwork in the garage for safekeeping until he could find the right person who would offer him the full price for the painting. Grandma T always liked to visit Timmy's yard sales. Her and Terry would sit around and talk about everything under the sun. One day, in the middle of Timmy's yard sale, Timmy needed to run to town for something and left Grandma T to watch over the items for sale. Soon after Timmy left, Grandma T became thirsty and went into the house to fetch herself some lemonade. On her way back out, she walked through the garage and noticed the valuable artwork. Having thought Timmy forgot to put his piece out for sale, she carried the artwork out to the other items for the yard sale. She thought it was quite funny when the next person that came to the sale inquired about the piece. Grandma T, of course, had no idea what it was worth, so she asked the man what he would be willing to pay for it. When he offered $50, Grandma T said sold. When Timmy came back from his errand, Grandma T told him that she sold the painting she had stumbled upon in the garage. "But you did what?" Timmy was furious. How could she do such a thing? That was their nest egg for their retirement. To say Timmy was ticked off would be an understatement. Was he still upset with Grandma T? Did he snap and kill her?
Terry is married to Timmy, Grandma's middle child. She was an outspoken woman with big hair.
She obtained her bachelor's degree and worked in a service occupation. Besides that, no one really knows too much about Terry. In fact, there are a bunch of family pictures circulating around the families, but there are none of Terry. We do know that Terry liked to smoke. Whenever you would look for Terry, she would be outside smoking. Terry was not allowed to smoke in the house, especially at Grandma T's. She would go to the carport and sit in Grandma T's swing while she smoked. But anytime Grandma T would see Terry on the swing, she would yell at her to get off. But this time is different. Terry has not seen any of the relatives since the holidays. She has been working hard over the past several months to kick the smoking habit. She hasn't lit up once since New Year's Day. Anytime Terry feels the urge to take a puff, she eats nuts, specifically walnuts and cashews. Fortunately for Terry, there's always a bowl of nuts at Grandma's house. Just the other week, when Grandma T stopped by the home Terry shared with Timmy, she helped out with the yard sale when Timmy ran his errands. That was the same time that Grandma T pulled the artwork out of the garage and sold that expensive painting for a few measly dollars. Terry ran into the house to grab a handful of walnuts while Grandma T minded the sale. When Terry returned, she had forgotten the hammer to crack open the nuts. So Terry reached into the toolbox that Timmy had out for sale and grabbed a large hammer. That did the trick. With just one little tap, the shells cracked open. But somehow, at the end of the yard sale, when Timmy took inventory of what was sold and which items remained, the mallet was missing. Was Terry upset that the painting was gone, and so was their nest egg? Was she mad at the fact that she always had to smoke outside? Did Terry do the unthinkable? Mike is Grandma T's second child. He joined the Army when he was 18 years old and served for several years. He married Betty in 1953. Over the years, Mike and Betty had 5 children together. Mike and his family traveled all over the world, at one point living in France. His children still speak fondly of their adventures overseas. The family loved to wear matching shirts when they traveled, most likely to make it easier for Mike and Betty to keep track of the 5 children. When Mike returned to the United States to settle down close to family, he bought a home with plenty of land. On this property, he started a farm and an orchard, producing a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. He was able to sell his produce at a stand on the family homestead. He also supplied Grandma T with the various produce items that she canned, such as cucumbers and tomatoes. Grandma T would always ask Mike for his best produce for her canning, leaving the remaining subpar items for Mike to sell at his produce stand. He regrettably handed over his best produce to Grandma T. This directly impacted his bottom line and the profit he was missing out on. After all, you can't charge top dollar for produce that was blemished or less appealing than the items that were given to Grandma T. And we all know veggies are always better when they are fresh. To top it off, Mike never received any money from Grandma T from the jars of canned produce she sold at the church bazaars. Heck, she even had her canned items for sale in Mike's produce stand, selling at least 150 jars a week, and never once had she offered to give him a cut of the profits. After all, it was his produce. Did Mike finally get fed up with Grandma T always taking the best produce for her canning? Was it time that Grandma T found a new produce supplier? Betty is married to Mike. She is an LPN at a local hospital. Betty loved to sew for the family, especially the matching shirt she made for Mike and the kids. It seems like everywhere they went together, they always had on matching shirts. Once the family returned from France, Betty took a job at a local gas station as a truck stop worker. On several occasions, when the owner was away and the gas trucks arrived, Betty was responsible to make sure the gas was safely added to the holding tank. She wanted to learn all about the process to make sure it was being done properly and safely. The truckers taught her how the gas lines were hooked up, taking gas from the truck to the tank and the tank to the pump. She would also help out the truckers by watching the pressure valve to make sure the fuel was pumped at the appropriate level. Betty also loved to can produce just like Grandma T, but she was left with whatever produce was left over and didn't sell at the produce stand. Remember, Mike always gave Grandma T the best produce. Then he would take whatever produce was left and sell it in the produce stand. If items were starting to approach the point where it was no longer appealing or sellable, Betty would take those items and can them for the family to use. But Grandma T's canned produce was always better than Betty's, as she had the best of the lot. She even asked Grandma T if she could watch her while she was canning, but Grandma T never seemed to have the time for her. Did Betty resent Grandma T for taking the best produce on their farm? If Mike really cared about Betty, he would give her the best produce and give Grandma T the subpar items to use for her canning. Maybe if Grandma T would have given Mike a cut of her profits, Betty would be more understanding. Maybe Betty should have a long talk with Grandma about her canning and lay down the law, now giving Grandma T the bottom of the barrel instead of Betty having to settle once again for the leftover garbage.
Maria is Grandma T's only daughter and the youngest child of the bunch. She was also Grandma T's favorite, and everyone knew it, and Maria knew how to use that to her advantage. Maria ran the local thrift store in town. She would take in the items that people wanted to throw away and displayed them in the store so someone else would be able to use them. Once the thrift store shut down, Maria asked Grandma T if she could run the laundromat for her. After all, Grandma T was getting up there in age, and it was about time she retired. Of course, Grandma T wouldn't hear of it. So, begrudgingly, Maria took a job at a car dealership. There were several men who also worked there. They made it known that Maria was just the secretary and to leave the car sales to the men. But Maria could outsell any of the men in the dealership. The men would look down at Maria and bully her every day. She would leave work each day sad and upset from the day's events. She would go home and tell Grandma T all about how the men were treating her badly and telling her that her place was to be the secretary. Grandma T didn't seem to care. She was just a secretary. Selling cars is man's work, she would cry. Maria would continue to work at the car dealership. Without the support of even her mother, what could she do? One afternoon, Maria came home from work after dealing with the harassment and rude comments, tired of the garbage that was happening on the job. She had finally had enough. She told Grandma T that she decided to leave the dealership and find another job. Grandma T was furious. How would Maria pay her bills? She had just divorced her third husband, so there was no one left to support her. No one except Grandma T. When Maria asked Grandma T if she could stay at her place until she found another job, Grandma T chuckled and said, "Until you find another job? How long will that be?" Grandma T just didn't understand. Was Maria upset that Grandma T didn't let her stay at her house? Did Maria now realize she is no longer Grandma T's favorite? Farley the dog is one of a kind.
thank goodness. This dog is out of his mind. Farley belongs to Bobby's son, Donnie. Donnie is away on vacation, so Bobby and Beth have been dog sitting this week while Donnie is away. Donnie comes back later today and will be joining the family at the reunion tomorrow. But since Bobby wanted to help set up for the big event, he had to bring Farley along to the lake house. Farley has been getting in all sorts of trouble while he's been with Bobby and Beth. He's been caught standing on the middle of the dining room table, messing up the beds, digging in the dirt, and chasing the neighbor dogs. But his best friend is the neighbor's horse, Bullet. Farley loves to terrorize that horse, and when I say terrorize, I'm not kidding. Just yesterday, Farley was nowhere to be found. Bobby finally found Farley in the pen with the neighbor's horse. The two of them were chasing each other around the pen when Farley snuck up behind Bullet and grabbed onto his tail. The horse began to spin around and kick until Farley finally had enough and let go. It was quite funny, seeing the dog hanging onto the horse's tail while being spun around in circles. Bobby couldn't help but laugh at that crazy mutt. Unfortunately, Farley is also an ankle biter. Anytime he sees an ankle, he goes into attack mode. God bless anyone brave enough to show their exposed ankles with Farley around. Wait, Grandma T always had her ankles showing. Did Farley attack Grandma T while she was canning? Did Grandma T try to fend off Farley and fell in the process? Oh gosh, I hope not.
You are all considered suspects in this crime.
Your job and that of law enforcement is to find the person responsible for her death. We have gathered several clues about the crime, but have reason to believe we may have missed a few. We need your help to assist law enforcement in capturing the perpetrator. At this point, I need you to reveal your weapon to the other family members, or should I say murderers. One of these items may be the weapon that was used to kill Grandma T. You will have 15 minutes to search the house to look for 10 clue cards scattered about, each card related to a specific suspect. Each clue card will reveal an important hint about that suspect. When you find a clue card, only take one, and do not share the whereabouts of the clues with the other suspects. You may also find visual clues at the crime scene that, although they will not have a clue card next to it, the visual clue may actually provide valuable information to determining the guilty party. Since this is an active murder investigation, please be careful not to disturb the crime scene. Once the time limit has elapsed, you will be given the chance to review each of the clue cards you have found. While you make your way around the family home, make notes of the crime scene in your notebook. These can also be referenced later. The coroner will be here in approximately 10 minutes to remove the body. Once that time limit has expired, so will your access to the crime scene. At this point, everyone should grab their pen and their notebook. Don't forget, there are 10 clues that you will find hidden throughout the family home. Once you find all 10, or at the end of the time limit, you will return to the table to review the clues you uncovered. With that being said, let's begin the search. In 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome back. I hope you found some clues that could help me solve this crime. Please take the next 10 minutes to review the clues you found scattered throughout the house. You can also look at the information on the timeline provided in your character booklet for additional clues. Now that you've had some time to look over the clues you found, it is time to interrogate the other suspects. Please grab your character interrogation script and open to page 1. It is now time to find out who was the killer.
Write your name on the top of the accusation form, then place a check by the person who you think is guilty of the murder of Grandma T. Once all players have made their selection, the killer will be revealed. Please make your accusation now. Let's find out if you have correctly identified the killer. Listen to each of the suspects as they reveal if they are innocent or guilty. Who would have thought that Grandpa T would be capable of such a devious plan to eliminate Grandma T? Grandpa T will get what he deserves. Thank you for your assistance in finding Grandma T's killer.
So how did you do? Did you figure out who the killer was?
There were several clues that could have led you in the direction of Grandpa T being the killer. First, when you look in the crime scene area, you should have seen the following picture. This picture means that the killer was a male. The killer was 6 feet 2 inches tall, and they were right-handed. There are several pieces of vital information found here on your clue card. First, the killer is 6 feet 2 in height. At the crime scene, you should have seen some footprints on the floor. 6 feet, to be specific. Also, on the ruler you have, the arrow is pointing to the number 2, indicating 2 inches or 2 inches in height. That leads you to 6 feet 2 inches tall. You also should have found the handprint at the crime scene as well. This indicates that the killer was right-handed. Grandpa T was 6 feet 2 inches tall and right-handed, and he is the only suspect that fits this description. Also, if you were able to find the autopsy report, the cause of death is presumed to be blunt force trauma to the head. The actual cause of the trauma was the pressure cooker valve striking Grandma T in the head when the cooker was rigged to cook at a dangerously high temperature. If you look at the crime scene closely, you would have seen the pressure valve lying on the floor near Grandma T's head. It's time to start working on the next murder mystery. Until then, take care.